This is John from Use Basic Motorsports Performance Parts, and today we're coming to you from the shop at Use Basic Motorsports, and today we're working on the race car. Specifically, we're going to talk today about securing your push rods and your roller rockers during the off season. Now, there's a couple of reasons why you want to do this. First of all, you want to keep your rockers and push rods thoroughly lubricated during the off season, so there's no issues for when you reinstall them at the beginning of the season. Also, what you're trying to do is you're going to do is to relieve the spring pressure off of the springs. Because of the amount of lift that the cams have in race applications, what you're going to do, if you leave the pressure on the spring, you will prematurely weaken the spring, which is going to cause performance issues when you're ready to reinstall them, which is going to actually alter and change your ET as well as your speed. So in this video, we're going to show you how to remove them, how to store them, and get ready for the new season. Now what we're going to do is we're going to give you an overview of what we're trying to accomplish here. So as you can see, what we're going to want to do is to remove the valve covers. In order to remove the valve covers, each one has a 7/16" nut on the stud. We're going to remove all 8 of them. Pull the valve cover, thoroughly inspect the inside or the underneath of the valve cover and clean it up. We're also going to remove and thoroughly check the valve cover gasket to be sure that there's no breaks, tear, anything bends in it. If there is, we're going to scrap them and we're going to get a new set and put them in. If they look fine and they are what they're supposed to be doing and that's sealing properly, we're just going to leave those in there and go to the next step. We're also going to remove this AN fitting here, which is a vent for the valve cover. We're also going to remove this number 16 return line. That actually is returning from the dry sump oil pump back into the oil tank. We're having that removed. What we're going to also do is, in order to crank over this engine properly, what I have is a 1 5/8" gear wrench. As you can see, it's got a ratchet on one side because of limited space. So what I'm doing is I'm literally putting this over the 1 5/8" nut that's located on the crankshaft snout, and I'm going to turn this thing clockwise, or the rotation of the engine, until I get both my intake and exhaust valves at the highest level to take the most stress off of them. Because what I will be doing then is removing the nuts off of them and removing the rocker and push rod completely. So I just wanted to give everyone kind of an overview before I actually get into it, to start it, so that everybody understands what the process looks like. Now, as you can see, I have the valve cover off, and you can see the rockers and push rod and into the actual head. Now, what I did is I turned my 1 5/8" wrench on my crankshaft. When I turned it happened to be at 270 degrees. While I was turning it, that ultimately will affect the camshaft, to the lifters, to the push rods, and ultimately to the rockers themselves. As you can see, based on where the degree is of the crankshaft and camshaft, literally number 3 intake is loose, and you can see it. You can see me shaking it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these 2 bolts off of the rocker stand, which will ultimately remove this. When I'm done removing it, I'm simply going to take this off and then take it over to what I have is these great nifty containers. And basically how I mark them is, for the rockers, I have exhaust, intake, exhaust, and intake. One side of it is 135, the other side is 2468. And what I'm going to do is put the corresponding exhaust number 3 into the corresponding exhaust number 3 in here, and you will see, we'll come back and I'll show it what it looks like fully submerged in the oil. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a 3/8 inch wrench with a drive with an extension and a 3/8 inch 12 point. And what I literally did is broke or removed each one of the bolts that holds the rocker in place. What you do is very carefully remove the rocker, holding onto the bolts so you actually have the rocker in your hand. And remember, this is an intake rocker that came off of number 3 cylinder. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it over here and we're going to be sure that we have the number 3 cylinder, and this is going to be an intake. So we're going to go to intake, and what we're going to do is, if you can pan in over here closer, what we're literally going to do is we're going to drop this into the oil. And as you can see, what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to add probably about another 2 quarts so that the oil covers up the whole rocker itself. And that will ensure that this thing will be lubricated and protected during the off season. Now, at the same time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the number 3 intake cylinder push rod out. I'm going to simply inspect it to be sure it looks fine, no issues. Then I'm going to take this and install this into this handy container I actually built, and that this holds the push rods in an upright position but under the oil level so it stays oiled all through the off season. So this is actually the intake push rod. It's for number 3, so I just look down in here and I see 1, I see number 5, and it's got my intake, or number 3. So I'm simply going to drop this thing in there, and as you can see in here, it is still underneath. I mean, it's a little over the top of the oil level. I'm going to throw another quart and a half of oil in there because, again, I want these to be submerged completely during the off season. So as you can see, the process is pretty simple to do. But so going forward, I'm going to finish up cranking over the camshaft or the crankshaft so that I can identify the loose rockers at the highest point on each cylinder and remove each one of them, the rocker and the push rod, and put them in my containers during the off season. Okay, so, and then while I'm doing that, I'm inspecting everything else around this area. Once I get all of these removed and taken off, what I'll simply do is reinstall the valve cover and just put on a couple of the 7/16 inch nuts, and there you go. It's pretty much all done for the season. You're going to get your rockers and your push rods will be lubricated all the time. Plus, most importantly, I'm taking the pressure off of these springs, which are going to cause premature they're going to weaken prematurely, sorry. Guess I can't English all that well sometimes, but at least I'm getting the point across. It'll control, and at least you won't have dead springs when you put them back together, and you got to go out to Use Basic Motorsports Performance Parts and buy a brand new set of springs for your ride and for your race car. So anyway, if you have any questions, please by all means let me know. Subscribe to our newsletter. We're on all of the platforms. Please like us, subscribe, love us, do everything you can, and follow us at usebasicmotorsports.com. Thanks everybody. Talk to you later.